Welcome to the podcast Stuck in the Middle, a podcast that explores psychological themes and issues of ambivalence. My name is Palan, and I'm a lifelong educator and social entrepreneur, the pro chancellor of the University of Cyberjaya, and I'll be moderating the podcast today. Today, we'll explore the theme the psychology of anxiety. I've taken some great ideas from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness. To do this, we have an expert panel with us. We have from the Faculty of Medicine, University of Cyberjaya, Dr. Mastura Rasly.
Hello.
We have the Dean of Psychology from the University of Cyberjaya, Professor Anasuya Jegathevi Jegathejan. And we have the Student Council Chairman, Hussein Mohammed Abdullahi from Kenya, who is pursuing a degree in medicine at the University of Cyberjaya. So, welcome to this podcast. The Anxious Generation is a book on how to reclaim human life for human beings in all generations. Of course, as always in any research and in any book, some ideas are contested. But let's first of all figure out what is anxiety. And obviously, I would like to uh, take the permission of the psychiatrist to refer to the Diagnostic Manual of Psychiatry. Anxiety, they say, is related to fear, and fear is defined as an emotional response to real or perceived imminent threat, whereas anxiety is an anticipation of a future threat. When dealt with healthily, of course, it is normal, it's good, but when it becomes excessive, it becomes a disorder, which Jonathan Haidt differentiates into internalizing and externalizing. Internalizing anxiety, depression, resulting in fear, sadness, hopelessness, and externalizing disorders such as anger management, violence, etc. So, Prof, can you please let us know, from your perspective as a psychiatrist, how do you see anxiety?
How I see it, Tansri, is like worrying. That's the key word here. So, worry is not necessarily a bad thing. You can't associate the word worry with just automatically negative.
Mm-hmm.
We need a certain level of worry, we need a certain level of fear for us to progress, to improve. It's an impetus for us to move from this point here to a point further away or higher
Mm-hmm.
up,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the issue is when it is persistent,
Mm-hmm.
when it is detrimental, when it stops us from achieving our full potential. So internalizing things that's happening in the mind, overthinking again and again and again, or something external, which is making us stop from reaching out and doing something or avoiding completely. So that is what anxiety is. But I wonder also at the same time whether it is overused in this
Mm-hmm.
generation,
Mm-hmm.
or and in some situations underused.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Prof?
Yeah, when we talk about anxiety and I'm feeling anxious, most of us, when we feel anxious, we know what we are feeling anxious about. But nowadays, you get people who like they're anxious about everything. At night, they can't stop thinking, they can't stop imagining. They imagine the scenarios getting worse and worse. Whatever the case is, the brain is working at hyper speed. And, of course, we have this to help us to tell every single story, to tell all kinds of information that we don't need and increase our worries. And yeah, and we don't stop. And we don't have an off button nowadays in some cases to switch off factors that lead to anxiety, which is bad news, sometimes even good news because they have good news. What about me? How come I don't have good news? No, so that kind of anxiety really comes about and it's everywhere.
It's something you just told me outside the room. Uh, well, they had 200 likes and I only got 20 likes on Facebook. Yeah.
yes.
Right. So let's go to Abdullahi from another generation and from another part of the world. So, how do you see anxiety from a student's perspective?
The way I see anxiety from a student's perspective is, for example, I'd like to give an example with my definition. So, for example, when we are faced with stressful situations or things that can cause us stress, be it psychological or physical, then those times our body reacts in a certain way. There is an mechanism for us to respond to stress, be it psychological or physical. For example, if you are getting chased by a bear, for example, then your body tells you to run, right? So these physiological changes in your body, when they persist, then that's when anxiety sets in. That's when you constantly worry, you constantly have a certain fear, be it anticipatory or be it in real life situations. So from my point of view is anxiety is an excessive and constant worry that is
Okay.
less.
Okay, got it. Fight or flight. Is that the right word?
Correct. That's
Right.
fight or flight.
Maybe,
That's what you
Prof, from a
described.
psychological angle, would you like to just elaborate a little bit? Do I fight it or do I just take a flight?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. If it's a bear, I probably suggest flight. But if it's your boss, then maybe you want to fight, or maybe you just want to friend. Because actually, there's fight, friend, fight, flight, friend, and what's the other one? And there actually other ways of dealing with it, not just fight and flight. The problem with anxiety nowadays is we don't know what we're fighting. We don't know what we're flying from. And that's when it becomes problematic. I think he actually said it quite well. It's like, I'm always in a state of fight and flight. I always feel somebody is watching me, somebody is judging me, somebody is looking at me,
Sure.
and I don't know how to respond. So my anxiety is going up and up and up, and I don't know how to control it.
Sure. From worry, anxiety.
Okay. The thing is, I think we have to also keep in mind that the relationship is actually bi-directional. So, in one way of looking at it is that fight or flight, and that decision of do I fight or do I fly away, flight, right, run away. That's the one that's causing the worry. But a lot of the times, it can also be the other way around. Your excessive worry, excessive overthinking, and then it builds up on the anticipatory anxiety, and then it becomes a panic attack, and that is also in a way.
But worry has taken over our lives, right? We worry about so many things. I was talking to a parent, and the parent said, "Oh, when I was young, I was worried about my studies, my career, about my marriage, my children,
Okay.
my children's job, my children's career, my grandchildren, and it never stops till I die." So how do I actually manage it in a world that's taken over by technology? Because I remember, and I was just sharing this with some of you uh, before coming in here, that when I started out at that time, we just basically corresponded with the letters. So even if you wanted to exchange letters, I will have to sustain the worry within me for a week till my mother wrote back to me. Then, of course, we changed it to PC and internet connections.
Emails.
Yeah. And then it became slightly different. It became the next wave was primarily smartphones with apps.
Yeah.
And I can do anything with these apps today. So my daughter always looks up at my mobile phone and says, "Papa, what's your screen time today?" Right. So our attention, and that's one of the things that social psychologist John Twiggins talks about. Generations differ
Okay.
based on their experiences. We were radio based and television based. And then I think some of you are probably PC based along with that. And you guys are now based completely with your smartphones.
Yeah.
So, three, Harris from Google, he talks about three things. He says Apple, Facebook, and Google, they have taken away humanity's attention. So all our attention is going down towards these apps. So how do we move away? Because one of the arguments that Jonathan Haidt puts is he says the play-based childhood is being replaced with phone-based childhood.
Yep.
So how do we, or like our dean of psychology said, people are comparing themselves with the number of likes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so what do we do? Maybe we start off with you, Prof, from a psychiatrist perspective, not necessarily from a
Ecological
pharmacological
aspect, yeah.
perspective, but looking at the human perspective,
Mhm,
how can we rewire
mhm.
and go back to the basics?
Right. So I don't think this is in any way at all a new concept or a novel concept. Um, uh, Bowlby, uh,
Well,
yeah,
correct.
they've been talking about this, about creating a better attachment. Essentially, that's what we need. That is what we need to help the anxious generation. That is what we need to help create a more interesting, more worthwhile, more rewarding attachment for the younger generation or any
Attachment
generation
to
at all. Attachment to media, attachment to phones. You can't just go around and say, you know what, this is not healthy for you. You have to step out of this. And they'll just turn around and say, but mommy, you're on your phone too, right? So it is not just about creating that awareness, it is about giving them an alternative that would work. And it boils back down to
So
attachment.
would it work if I send them to the outward bound school for 2 weeks and let them experiment, let them learn something experiential, doing something where they
That's
forget the phones?
that's one way of looking at it. But if only they are doing it, no one else is doing
Family.
it, then the whole FOMO steps in, fear of missing out. I'm the one missing out because I'm not on social media. All my friends are on social media. I'm missing out because I have to do this. It's a punishment whereby if you make it a family activity, you know what? We're all going to take a break, a detoxifying week away from phones. We are going outdoors. We're going to spend time with each other. We're going to swim in the lake. We're going to play around the campfire as a family. Then that becomes a reward rather than a. And I think that's
Yeah,
where
you know,
we
it's
should go.
interesting you talk about it because I had a friend of mine who's a legal counsel for us for many years, Julian Hashim, and he said that the way that we manage it, and I remembered what he said when I was out on a vacation to the Andaman Islands. The Havelock Islands is beautiful. It's just about 2 hours away from Malaysia, and it only costs 300 ringgit by AirAsia to go up and down. So I was at a restaurant because it was simply seafood or something like that, and all of us were on our mobile phones while the food was about to come. So I remembered what Julian Hashim had told me. He has got technology-free weekends.
Yep.
So what we did was I collected all the phones and I put it up right, piled it up there, and then it looked a little bit odd. There was a quite unease because we didn't know what to do, and it took us a little bit of time to readjust, as psychologists would say, readjust, and then start talking to one another.
That's fine.
And I remember when my kids were young, we would take them to the parks, and then the swing, and the kid will say faster, 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 and then we'll be very nervous because what happens if the swing falls off or something like that? We've heard horror stories, and Jonathan Haidt talks about it. He says, "Look, don't put restrictions. Let them have this play-based childhood."
Right.
So I can relate to that. What do you think about managing this play-based versus phone-based childhood experiences? And like what Prof. Dr. Mastura says, look, it has to appeal to everybody, not just to me.
You see, now I don't know how this happened because sometimes you can't really only blame one generation and say all these kids on social media. How come we have a generation of parents that have to helicopter in and be Karens? Make it hard for people to do their job, make it impossible for students to face consequences of their actions in a logical manner and think that people are out to get them or something like that. But that type of parenting has created this generation of anxiety where the parenting is irrational. The parenting is fear based in itself, it is aggression based in itself. It's not about self control, it is about making my problems everybody else's problems instead of making my emotion something that is beneficial to everybody so my interaction is calm and beneficial. Instead I go and explode And you know what? When I explode, I get things done. When I don't explode, nobody pays attention to me. And so Karens have learned to Karen. Okay, so that has led to this generation. So when we talk about anxiety generation, we can't only limit it to the kids. Even the adults are anxious. Even the adults are creating that anxiety at home. And yeah, 100%. If you're going to ask the kids to not go and play, the parents must be not on their phones as well. They must be out playing as well. They must be doing things with the family
By
as well.
example.
Yeah, and that's hard. You ask some people, some adults to take away their phone, and you get the same reaction as the kids.
Let's ask a young person. Yeah.
From the topic of discussion today, I think I'm also part of the partly Gen Z or partly the anxious generation. Okay, the way I see it is, I think in this part of the world, the upbringing is different compared to the part of the world where I am from. Okay, and
That's
the
interesting.
parenting is also different. For example, I have been in Malaysia for almost 4 years now, for more than 4 years, and I don't usually see children playing on the streets. I don't see children interacting everywhere. It's always
Can I quickly interrupt you?
yes.
Now.
Now
Those days we used to
days
play
it was
football.
I
different.
play badminton on the
Yeah,
streets.
yeah. We used to play
Okay.
football in the rain. Yeah, I remember going to the lake club, and but now, yes, you're correct.
Now,
Please
yes.
continue. Sorry to
Now,
interrupt.
especially because parents are scared. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
For example, if I let my child go out, okay, I don't have a child, but this is a scenario. Okay, if I let my child go out, he might get hurt. He might get into a fight. There are a lot of dangers out there. Okay, so let me just keep him in the house, give him a phone, let him play where I can see him and monitor him. Okay, I can restrict his access to certain things through the phone, but I cannot restrict the people that he has interactions with outside. So eventually, this leads to like a safety net. Okay, and this safety net tends to produce I might be insensitive, but fragile children.
Yeah.
So later on, the fragility, you keeping your child in a safety net, you keeping shielding him from or her from the outside world, or not interacting with other children, produces this anxiety within them. So now when they go outside, if they don't know how to deal with conflicts. For example, if I went out as a 10-year-old, I will get into a fight with my friend. Okay, so this is teaching me conflict. I'll go back home, I'll complain to my mom, I'll complain to my dad, to my sisters, but next time I see him outside, we're still playing, we're still okay.
Right.
Okay,
right,
so we
right.
carry these teachings out into the world, through our 20s, how we deal with people, how
Does
we deal
it
with
still
scenarios.
happen today in Africa? Because the phone still, I'm sure,
Yes.
pervades every country in the world.
Yes, of course. Everywhere there are phones. However, where the school I went to, for example, was mm, restrictive. Okay, so we were not allowed to have mobile phones except on the weekends. So what do we do for the rest of the time? I go home. I go to school in the morning, clean, tidy attire. I come back home. I'm missing buttons. I probably have a bruise. So all of this is play based, like you said, play based and phone based. So I think in that part of the world, the phone based is more. The play based is
More
more
active.
practiced. Yeah, it's more active right now. It's still active right now compared to the phone based, which is here.
But I have a question, Hussein. So
Yes.
when you come back home
Mm.
with a few missing buttons, hopefully not teeth,
Yeah.
just a few bruises here and there,
Yeah.
what's the family's reaction?
My family's reaction is, Hussein, you're not going to play after school tomorrow. You have to come home straight.
That is the
So-
point. That is the point. That's why I wanted
Yes.
to highlight attachment. So attachment is that creating a balance, that it's okay for you to explore boundaries, to discover new things, yet whatever it is, there's still a safe base to come back home to.
Maybe, Prof, you can just explain a little bit more on attachment.
Okay. So when we talk about a healthier adaptive attachment, we're talking about a secure attachment. A lot of the times, parents, we know our duty is to keep our babies safe, right? Paramount. However, babies grow up. they become toddlers, they become children, they become teenagers, they become adults. And by the time they are adults, we want them to be as well equipped as possible for to face all possibilities in life,
Challenges.
all challenges in life. So is just keeping them safe and always keeping them safe going to achieve that ultimate goal?
But isn't that the ultimate desire of every Asian parent? I'm not sure about African parents,
Yeah.
Asian parent,
Mhm.
because
Of course, every parent worries, but like I said, keep in mind the end goal. You know, the end goal is not to keep them safe forever and ever, because they will grow up, they will be exploring the world. That's how we create, you know, new findings, new ventures, pioneers in the world, in science, in adventure, in everything, basically. If you are brave enough to explore the world around you. And that ultimately should be the parenting goal, to create a balance between exploring the world, yet you know that it's safe enough to come back. And that's how you create a balanced adult later.
two thoughts there, because one of the things that I had my nephew's daughter come up, Uncle, can I have a phone, smartphone? I said, well, I will get you a flip phone. He said, well, the flip phone is of no use because I don't have any of those apps. I said, no, you can have a flip phone just for safety, communication, but a smartphone. We'll get it to you when you get into Form 1 or whatever. And oh boy, she remembered when she was getting to Form 1, and the day she reached Form 1, she came to me and said, can I have the smartphone? I said, not yet. And then she said, look, everybody else in my class has got a smartphone.
Yes.
So, if I don't have one, I'm going to be shunned, or as Jonathan says, shamed.
Mm-hmm.
Shunned or shamed. And he says, look, I might as well die rather than go through this shunned death or societal death, as they call it. So, and that's a worry. So, how do we manage that?
Yeah,
How do
but
we manage those kinds of expectations? Because those lead to anxieties, they lead to worries. And if you don't actually manage it, it can even lead to depression.
Yep.
you see, the funny thing was when we talk about, I want to protect my kid, I don't want my kid to be afraid. The more you do that, the less they learn how to protect themselves. The less they learn how to be quiet, how to wait. Now, when you talk about research, even way back research, one of the best things to teach your child is delayed gratification. That
Of
means I
course, yeah.
can wait to be gratified.
The marshmallow experiment.
Yeah, the marshmallow
Impulsive. You don't
experiment.
want people
So,
to be impulsive.
and now what is this? This is the exact opposite of that.
Exactly.
So what when you have a family and you have family dynamics, what do we need to teach kids? We need to teach kids to sit quietly, meditate, be patient, do all those things. But now you see people, even in places of prayer, instead of scolding the child and telling the child sit and be quiet, they pass the mobile phone to the child in places of prayer. I mean, so at what point does the child learn self regulation? At what point does the parent learn self regulation?
Sure.
If you're not going to parent.
Sure.
So when we talk about, this child is the fear of losing out. Okay, fine. Can we teach the child how to manage their emotions? Then you don't face that fear of losing out. I believe I have pretty good management of my emotions even at a younger age. I mean, we may not have fear of using out, but I was an overweight young child. So that means I was bullied. So wherever you look at it in a different name, different context, you're still in a social situation where you're being shamed or you're being looked down upon. And as somebody who's overweight, I've experienced that. But at the same time, I had a mom who taught me how to regulate my emotions at a basic level,
Sure.
how to manage and how to not give in and not respond, but at least think about something before I reacted. Okay, can respond properly. So these type of questions now, when we're looking at this kind of situation, how have we survived as a human being until now? What are we doing now in the last 20, 30, 40 years that is destroying that? And I think that there's a lot more than just whether we are using the phone. It is how we parent, how we look at what are, how people keep calm, how people manage their thoughts, how people manage their behaviors. All of these come together. And yeah, so that's where the situation is.
Yeah, but one of the things that he keeps talking about here is anxiety's foundational harms. So maybe as a student or as a psychiatrist, one they say is social deprivation because of my attachment with other things that's non-social, sleep deprivation because I hang on to that. Number three is unfortunately attention fragmentation. It just can't seem to focus. And number four is like what University of Malaya's Professor Rusty says, addiction. We get addicted to. And I remember walking in my alma mater a few years ago, Federation University, and they always had these huge posters which said, if you can't get away from your mobile phones, speak to the counselor. I didn't quite see that as a serious problem because I was at another generation. But then it was a problem. So how do we deal with some of these foundational harms?
So the foundational harms can occur, and you can just change social media to something else. Video games, you can change it to going out with your mates over the weekend at the pub. You can change it to basically anything, right?
I think the important thing from my perspective is you find something that works for you. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah. For example, for one of the things that work for me is once I do a task, I set a reward for myself. Okay. So that lets me get my attention on one thing and avoid the attention fragmentation. So, for example, I really want to go on my phone, but I need to finish this. So instead of doing both simultaneously and causing myself multitasking, I'm not productive here. I'm not productive here. I finish this, and as a way of avoiding the attention fragmentation and getting myself a reward, I'll use this later. This also like limits my addiction to maybe multitasking or maybe staying on my phone the whole time. So I think the important thing to me, from my perspective, is finding something that works for you. Maybe the thing I've just said does not resonate or it doesn't work with somebody else. Yeah, as well.
I know Jonathan, he talks about an epidemic of mental illness. And I think one of the biggest challenges that in his research he quotes that less than one third of teenagers in the United States is very US centric, but he says less than one third of the teenagers in the US said that they did not have to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or did not experience anxiety or depression at least once or twice a year. So, given that context, just moving away a little bit from the phone based culture, students also get anxious when they go for examinations. It's not that they don't know the subject, it's just that they are so anxious about the exams. So, how do you see that kind of a challenge?
Okay, you are talking to the right person at the right time. Because in a month's
exams really close.
Yes, in a month's time, I'll be doing my first professional exam.
All right, okay.
Yes.
Redoing it, huh?
Yeah, doing it now. So now I feel like I'm okay to take the exam. I'm ready to take the exam. But an example, the other day, I just took there was a QR code given to us by one of the lecturers to scan and attempt the questions. I look at the question, I'm like, what? I'm ready. I am ready. I read this. I know the answer. But then I see 4 answers and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. You understand? So now, because of the fear that I have of that question, because of the fear that I have of the upcoming exam, I freeze and my brain doesn't work. My arms are working. Maybe I'm solving a question, but I don't know where to go after the first point. I don't know where's the second point. I have too much fog going on. So that is that the anxiety affects us hugely. It has a huge impact on us in terms of, for example, exams. Like that, I think that's the best and most optimum example that we can give. And in other situations, then, for example, in public speaking, if we have to present to our lecturers or doctors in the hospital, the same thing happens. As soon as the anxiety kicks in, I'm done for. Not only me, but we are all done for. Meaning
Sure,
we can't be
sure.
as productive.
How do we manage exam phobia?
When I had exams and we had exam fears, maybe this is not so kosher, but the reality of what we used to do is say a prayer before the exam, and then if you forget, sit down, say a prayer, breathe, say a prayer, then take calm down and go back and do the next question. Skip that, go do the next question, go the rest, go back again. This was taught to us by, not in school but outside of school, by the parents and reiterated a few times. And there were exams because maths is not my favorite subject. I froze couple of times, and that's what I do. I'd sit down, I'd say the prayer. So we planned. We planned for failure. We planned contingency methods. And what it did, and later as a psychologist, I'm going to say, it's not so much the prayer, it calmed the mind because you go into freeze mode, you can't think. But going and saying something that's repetitive, that automatically you know it, takes your brain back to, my brain's working, I can remember this. So my brain does work. So I can be comfortable with my brain. I can control my brain. And when I can control my brain, suddenly the words start coming. So you don't have to pray. You can even do it.
What do you think, Prof?
I want to add on to what Prof. Anusha said just now, because that very, very same scenario is very much applicable to social media, phones, and everything as well. So it becomes overwhelming on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, when people make comments about your posts or your stories or whatever, and you freeze.
Yeah.
Or you feel like picking a fight. Or you feel like fleeing. I can't take this anymore. I want to self-harm. I want to hurt myself or something, right? Take, break, put it down. Deep breath. Connect with the real people on the real ground.
Exactly.
However, if we do not let our children, our younger generation know that this is what you can do, it's okay, you can put it down, then they won't know that this is what they should be doing or would be very, very helpful in doing.
You know, Prof, what basically took over my life as an entrepreneur?
Share with us.
You know, WhatsApp.
Oh,
Nobody wants to decide on anywhere else. They don't want to decide in
Everything.
meetings. They don't want to decide on email. They don't want to decide anywhere else. They don't. They say, well, email is too slow. Let's go to Slack or Trello. Otherwise, they just say WhatsApp. Let's have a group. Tap, 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 tap. And you know, people run today multi-billion-dollar corporations on WhatsApp. And that is what Prof said. We don't think through enough.
yeah.
We don't want delayed gratification. So decision making has to be,
Yeah.
and that's a problem because that comes into our life. Reflect, and sometimes when I'm home and my wife is talking to me and I'm on my WhatsApp because somebody wants an instantaneous decision, my wife says, "It's okay, I'll come back."
Gone. But at first, the first time, what I would do is tell them, hey, how about you get off your phone and then we can have a good time. If we're maybe playing a game or whatever it is, let's focus on this and then we can resolve that. Okay. But then I have to make sure that whatever he's doing is not more important. So you cannot, it's okay to hang out with your friends, but not when your parents are looking for you. So that is important. And if that doesn't work, then the next time before we go out, there has to be a boundary. Hey, are you going to be on your phone? If the answer is yes, then I might as well just go out with other friends, right? But if you promise me you're not going to be on your phone, then I'll hold you accountable to that anytime you pull out your phone. Okay, but I think another way people usually react nowadays, the anxious generation, is, oh, you're on your phone, let me be on my phone as well. You know, and that's how everything gets spoiled. The friendship is gone, everything is gone one by one.
I agree with you, but I want to extend that. Start at home. Everything that you want to do
Start at
should
home.
start with
No
yourself.
phones on the dinner table. Yeah?
No phone at the dinner table. Not and then literally go around the table. How was your day? How was your day? How was your day? I've got 5 kids and my partner, and then we'll just like every day at dinner time put your phone down. We're not angels. Some of us eventually will break the rule, but it is also a safe place to, you know what, mommy, you're holding your phone now. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll put it down. That's, I think, a
Many
healthier
years
way of
ago, I
doing
remember
this.
in 1998, I think there was an Asian financial crisis. I think it was, yeah.
1988, yes.
And I did something, I banned the word. When anybody talks about recession, tough time, I said, you'll be fined $10,
Oh,
right?
I'll be very
$10, yeah?
quiet.
So they're not supposed to say
Say it.
recession. And they're supposed to be positive, come in the morning. What can we do? Because we can't control what happens in the world, but what can we do? Yeah. And, most of the staff who earned $100 and $200, they earned it from me. Because I said, well, don't talk about the recession, box $10. Yeah, yeah. And, then I realized, oh my God, it starts from me. I think you used the word bi-directional. Yeah. And I think we want to be role models and examples. And I think you used a very good word. We are not angels, but it's about what psychologists say, self-awareness. And I think we continue to learn from the process. And coincidentally, I think maybe younger people, we actually talk about younger generation using the mobile phone more. But I think the older generation are equally
Oh, yeah.
responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Equally.
So if I would just like to wrap up, what do you think we should do? Now, Jonathan Haidt says no smartphones before high school.
Ah,
Number two, he says no social media before 16 years of age. Phone free school, yeah. And he says play based childhood. So he says he started a program, wait until 8th grade. Or he says, let's grow. So let's go and do some gardening or something like that. Or he says, outward bound school. Let's get some kind of projects like that. So I want to just ask you for our audience, maybe Dr. Mastura, from a psychiatric perspective, you want to accept
Mhm.
and understand that there are going to be challenges, but what's the way forward in a world over which we have very little control?
I have three take home from my side. Number one, I think that we shouldn't just vilify gadgets. I think we should use that as an opportunity to really, really live or propagate the whole idea of
Sure.
secure attachment. Use that as a way of letting our
Sure.
children explore, yet
Sure.
secure and safe. Number two, that it starts at home. So it starts today, it starts at home. But kids, this doesn't mean that you get 10 ringgit in the jar every time I use my phone at dinner table. Unfortunately for you. And then thirdly, make it as fun as possible. It is a reward to be here connected in real life, not a punishment.
Thank you. Thank you.
okay. There's more than one issue here about using phones and children using phones. Now, I'm going to agree with everything she said.
Managing anxiety because of that,
No, I'm actually going to go with I actually agree that children should not be on phones before 14. And I agree that it should be in a public area in the house and not have smartphones in rooms until the age of 14. And it's got nothing to do with anxiety. It's got to do with the dangers of social media and the people that we're inviting into our child's lives. And
Very true,
because I
very true.
work with child safety quite a lot, and I'm actually going to make people more anxious by saying that I will actually say that, yeah, I think 14, maybe not 18, but before 14, there's no reason for a child at bedtime to have their phones with them in their rooms. In fact, I don't think there should be anything that allows somebody to call your child when you are not aware in their room at night.
Texting.
Yeah, nothing. No text, no outside
No, but if you remember
communication.
those days, that's one of the things I said. The first wave was PC with the internet. The PC was in a common area.
Yes, that should
And,
be the way.
and if somebody came wrong on the computer or on the chat, we would say, shut down, quick, get it out. But today you have all kinds of scams and people get safe to have it in a public area.
And if your kids' bedtimes are 10 o'clock, then at 10, all the phones must be held by the parents. and it shouldn't be in their rooms at night because,
And there's so much of bad influence that goes because,
yeah,
unfortunately, today, even we talk about mental health. Unfortunately, today, people talk about sexual health. And I think porn goes straight into the phone,
oh yeah,
and the wrong people go. So we just have to be aware. But like what Prof said, it's also that we can't manage everything that goes out.
yeah.
So we have to teach responsibility. Yes, sir.
Okay. My I'll also choose 3. I think 3 is a good number. So let me start by saying that there is no one thing that's good and one thing that's bad. There's
Sure.
always that gray
Sure.
area, right?
Sure.
So phone is important. Giving them access to the social media
Sure.
is important. However, it should be at a certain age or
Sure.
certain times of the day. And at the same time, they need a healthy dose of play-based lifestyle. Okay. So having said that, I want to reiterate that I think children should be given the independence to do not whatever they like, but what they would love to. This will take me to my second point, which is you being the compass. So you give them
Oh,
independence.
beautiful.
Yeah, but the compass is you. So you direct them where to go. Once you direct them, how do you do that? How do you direct them? That takes me to my third point, which is by being a role model. Okay. So all of us, we talked about not having the phone, you as a parent, so that the child can see
Role
that
model.
you are not just talking, you're walking the talk, right? So by not being on the phone, by not giving the child, showing the child that instant gratification is a good thing, or by yelling at them, or by fighting in the house, maybe with your husband or whatever, you're giving them a compass on how to do certain things, how to manage conflict, how to talk to people, how to treat children, how to enjoy life while also setting boundaries. Okay, so give the children the independence by being the compass, and you are doing that by being a role model for them. So those are the things I think are very
Lovely.
important.
So we just want to be a compass,
Yes.
role model,
Yeah.
and make it play based. I think, Prof, you said you just set the example,
Yep.
create the attachment, and
Mhm.
you said make it public space.
Yep.
So that if there's a secret to be kept, then there is something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I found in this book is what the Chinese Zen master Zheng Zan said. If you want the truth, don't always struggle between for and against, because that's the mind's worst disease. Well, thank you so much for being here in the podcast. And I hope that we all manage our anxieties, and hope our audiences also find ways and means by which they manage the anxiety and the depression rather than use the word eliminate, because that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you for
us.
having
Thank
us.
you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.